Good morning, dear students. We are going to discuss histology of digestive system as we are done with the tongue with different papillae. Now let us continue with the other part of the gastrointestinal tract where we have esophagus and stomach for today. So now basically the parts of the gastrointestinal tract are esophagus, stomach, small intestine, which has duodenum, jejunum, ileum, large intestine. Then we have appendix. In the large intestine, we have ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, rectum, and anal canal. Okay, so you can see this is the esophagus. From here, the food is entering into the stomach. From here, you have this duodenum. From the duodenum, we have the other coils of small intestines. Those are jejunum and ileum. From here, again, you have this is the ascending colon. So from small intestines, now the undigested food will be entering into large intestines. This is ascending colon. We have transverse colon, then we have descending colon. This is sigmoid colon, then rectum, continuing as anal canal. So these are the parts of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so esophagus, stomach, duodenum, jejunum, ileum. This is cecum. We also have a blind finger-like projection, that is appendix. Then we have ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and anal canal. So the functions of gastrointestinal tract is basically digestion, which is facilitated by mixing of food, movement of food. We have many enzymes which are released into the gastrointestinal tract. The pH is different at different places. Okay, then control release of food into next parts. So the next important function of gastrointestinal tract is absorption. So the surface area of the small intestine is highly increased because of the folds which are actually called as villi. So not only that, when we see the microscopic level, the cell membrane of the like cells also will show the folds which are actually microvilli. So length of intestine is quite lengthy. The small intestine itself measures as long as 5 meters. So folds of intestines we see inside the stomach rugae. There are crypts, villi, microvilli. All these things are actually helping in absorption by increasing the surface area. So we also have a lot of lymphoid tissue along the gastrointestinal tract, which is helping in killing of microorganisms, which is called as gut-associated lymphatic tissue, also called as GALT. Now coming to the basic pattern of the gastrointestinal tract, whether it is stomach or esophagus or small intestine or large intestine, basically it has 4 layers. The 4 layers are as follows. We have mucosa, then we have submucosa, then muscularis externa and serosa. So the mucosa has further layers. This is the lining epithelium. Then we have lamina propria, muscularis mucosa. Below mucosa, we have submucosa. Then this is muscularis externa, where we have inner circular and outer longitudinal layer. The outermost protective covering is nothing but serosa. But in some parts like esophagus, we have, instead of serosa, where we don't, sometimes like in the parts like esophagus, we don't have peritoneal covering, which is then called as adventitial layer. Okay, so this is the basic layout. Mucosa, submucosa, muscular layer, and serosa. Now the mucosa, see this is the lining epithelium of mucosa of any part of the GIT. So it is having the lining epithelium. Basically, most of the parts of the GIT, we have columnar epithelium, which promotes the absorption of the digested food. It also helps in the secretion of digestive enzymes, except in the esophagus and the lower part of anal canal, where instead of columnar epithelium, we have stratified squamous epithelium, which is intended more for protection than absorption and digestion. So the numerous folds of the mucosal membrane, they are actually called as crypts. Okay, then now see, these are the villi, finger-like projections of the mucous membrane, which is seen in the lumen of the small intestines, is nothing but they are called as villi. So we have many glands also, like unicellular secretory cells. They are scattered among the cells of the lining epithelium. So they are named differently, like we have special cells like G cells in the stomach, we have goblet cells, all they are named differently, like which are nothing but unicellular secretory cells there. In some parts of the GIT, we have compound tubuloalveolar glands, which are present in the submucosa. Now, see, this is the mucosa. Then we have this lamina propria. This is muscularis mucosae, lining epithelium. Lining epithelium, lamina propria, and muscularis mucosa. Together, we call it as mucosa. Then we have this lamina propria. It is, if you just observe here, we have protective covering, that is collagen fibers and reticular fibers. They contain blood capillaries, lymph vessels, and nerves. Okay. In small intestine, the core of villus is attached to the lamina propria. So prominent aggregation of lymphatic tissue is found in the lamina propria. So which is nothing but mucosa associated lymphatic tissue, which is helping in defense. So the muscularis mucosae is especially, it's clearly seen here. So lining epithelium, lamina propria, and this area is nothing but the muscularis mucosae, which is the part of the mucus layer of the innermost part of the GIT. So this muscularis mucosa is thin layer of smooth muscle that separates lamina propria from the submucosa. So we have smooth muscles arranged in different directions, where we have inner circular smooth muscles and outer longitudinal. Then contraction of this muscularis mucosa is important for local mixing of intestinal contents. It changes the shape of mucosa that helps in absorption and secretion. So we have mucosa, and then we have submucosa. So submucosa consists of loose areolar tissue, which is actually connecting the mucosa to the muscularis externa. So its looseness is actually permitting the mobility of mucosa over the muscularis externa. So submucosa will contain so many blood vessels, lymphatics, nerve fibers, and special nerve endings which are called as Meissner's plexus. Now muscularis externa, the outermost muscle layer, which is present all over the GIT except in the upper part of the esophagus, where we have skeletal muscle. Rest all part of the GIT, we have smooth muscle in muscularis externa. So basically it is arranged in two layers, like we have inner circular and outer longitudinal. Between the inner circular and outer longitudinal layers, we have a nerve plexus, which is called as Auerbach's plexus, also called as myenteric plexus. Okay, so inner circular layer acts as a sphincter. For example, this is the pyloric part of the stomach. So here it is modified to form a true sphincter which closes tightly whenever food is entering into the stomach from the esophagus, so that food is retained in the stomach for a certain period of time, which will facilitate digestion. Now, internal anal sphincter also, there also you will see circular muscle fibers will modify to form the internal anal sphincter. We also have ileocecal valve, which is also like entry and exit point. Now coming to the outermost layer, which is called as serosa. It's merely a visceral peritoneum, which is made up of connective tissue. Here we have simple squamous epithelium. The esophagus lining outside the abdominal cavity has superficial layer called as adventitia. That means in esophagus we do not have serosa layer. Instead of serosa layer, we have adventitia. That means esophagus has no peritoneal covering. Okay. Now the basic pattern, to summarize, see, this is innermost lining of any part of the GIT transverse section. This is mucosa. In the mucosa, we have further three layers, like we have lining epithelium. Then we have muscularis mucosae is the outermost muscle, and in between we have lamina propria, which is shown in blue. Okay, then this area is submucosa, which is lot of loose connective tissue we have. Then we have muscularis externa, where basically we have inner circular, outer longitudinal layer, and the outermost covering basically we have is serosa, with the exception, like I said, in the esophagus. Now coming in detail to each part of the GIT, now we will go to esophagus. Now, esophagus, it's a muscular long tube which is 25 centimeters, which is conveying food from the pharynx to the stomach. Okay, so esophagus is a straight muscular tube extending from the pharynx to the stomach and abdomen. So mucosa, basically, we know like it has lining epithelium, lamina propria, and muscularis mucosae, what we have studied in general layout. So coming to the lining epithelium of the mucosa of the esophagus, it is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized type of epithelium. You can see the cells are in multiple rows, but dead layer keratin is not there. Hence, we call it as stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. After this, we have lamina propria, which is thin layer of loose connective tissue. Then below this, we have muscularis mucosa, which is thicker than other parts of the GLT. Okay. Then, so you can see the lining epithelium here, stratified squamous non-keratinized type of epithelium. Then we have this layer is nothing but the lamina propria. Then we have the muscularis mucosa. Okay. Then this is submucosa layer where we have so many blood vessels. You can see these are the cut sections of arteries and veins. We have glands also, esophageal glands. Okay, as you come out after mucosa, submucosa, and this is muscle layer. So muscle layer, we have inner circular and outer longitudinal muscle bundle. And this outermost covering, because this is esophagus, we have adventitia instead of serosa. Okay. Now coming to the submucous layer of the esophagus, it's a wide layer which is very much irregular, moderately dense connective tissue it has. It composed of bundles of collagen and elastin fibers. Due to these elastin fibers, mucosa is thrown into folds. Hence, the lumen of esophagus appears something like a star-shaped when you look under the microscope. Okay, then this submucous layer, as I've shown you in the previous slide, this submucous layer, it has so many blood vessels, arteries and veins, cut sections, and we have esophageal glands, isn't it? So it contains blood vessels and branched tubulo-alveolar mucosal glands. So this is looking like a star when you take a complete section. It's not possible to see completely under a normal compound microscope, but overall, when you see grossly, when you see the cut section in the dissection hall, you will see it, the lumen looks like a star shape because of the presence of so much of mucosal folds which are produced due to the presence of collagen and elastin fibers which are present in the submucosa. Okay, then we are coming to the next layer, that is third layer, where we have muscularis externa. So in the muscularis externa, we have two layers. Inner layer is circular layer, outer layer is longitudinal layer. Between the circular layer and longitudinal layer, we have a nerve plexus, which is called as nitric plexus of nerve fibers, and we also have ganglion cells, which are actually controlling the peristaltic movements of the esophagus. Now, if you just see the gross anatomy of esophagus, throughout now, at the length of the esophagus, you will see upper 1/3 of the esophagus, we have skeletal muscle. Middle 1/3 of the esophagus, we will have both skeletal and smooth muscle, whereas lower 1/3 is showing purely smooth muscle. Okay, now this is the outermost covering. So in the upper part, most of its part, because it has no peritoneal covering, we have adventitia. Okay, where we have loose areolar tissue, which is merging with the connective tissue of surrounding structures. So you can see all the layers here. So we have upper esophagus and lower esophagus, a comparative study. In the upper esophagus, you can see same layers like mucosa, submucosa. Muscle layer, we have skeletal muscle, I said. The outermost covering is actually adventitia. You can see these are all skeletal muscle bundles. Now, when you come to the lower part of the esophagus, these are smooth muscles. They have inner circular and outer longitudinal smooth muscles. Okay. Then the one which is most lower part of the esophagus, it also receives peritoneal covering. Hence, the outermost lining, we call it as serosa, not the adventitia as we see in the upper part of the esophagus. Okay, because just look at this outermost covering is adventitia, hence this is upper esophagus, where we have skeletal muscles in the third layer. Mucosa, submucosa, muscle layer where we have skeletal muscle, inner circular and outer longitudinal muscle bundles. Okay, then so outermost lining is adventitia. Then we have see there is a junction where you will see the esophagus is now it has to continue as stomach. Hence we call this junction as cardio-esophageal junction. Why it is called as cardio? Because in the stomach when we see we have cardiac end of the stomach, which is the upper part of the stomach. Hence you call this area as cardio-esophageal junction. Where we just observe the gradual change in epithelium. Now, in the esophagus, the lining epithelium appears stratified squamous, non-keratinized type of epithelium. But as you move to stomach, it has, see, esophagus has more protective function, whereas stomach has more of digestive function. That's the reason here the lining epithelium has transformed into simple columnar epithelium, and you are finding so many tubular glands. Okay, gastric glands we are finding gradually. The gastric glands they are seen in the lumen of stomach. Rest will remain the same, lining epithelium. Then we have lamina propria. Then we have muscularis mucosae, submucosa, muscularis externa, and then serosa. Okay. So here also we are seeing the esophagus only. So in the upper esophagus lining epithelium, you can see again same stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Then we have this is submucosa where we have glands, esophageal glands, blood vessels. Okay, then we have muscularis externa. So coming to the important functions of esophagus, main function of esophagus is to convey cheap food from the pharynx to the stomach. So that is the reason it is presenting with a epithelium which has more of protection, like stratified, like squamous, non-keratinized type of epithelium. In the submucosa, these are esophageal glands which is lubricating food. The secretions of these glands are actually entering into the lumen of esophagus, helping in the formation of food bolus and helps in the lubrication. The muscle layer, what we saw, inner circular, outer longitudinal, like skeletal and smooth in different parts of esophagus, they actually help in peristalsis. We have physiological sphincter at the lower end to prevent regurgitation. Okay, that is the sphincter which is seen at the junction of the lower end of the esophagus and the upper part of the stomach. Okay, cardiac sphincter of the stomach, which actually helps in the prevention of regurgitation of food. Now let us see stomach. So before we go to stomach, let us see few parts of the gross anatomy which we need to know so as to see the histological features in different parts of the stomach. So you can see yellow part is actually representing esophagus. In continuation, we have this cardia, nothing but here we have cardiac sphincter. So the other parts of the stomach are fundus, body, and the pylorus. Okay, fundus, body, and pylorus. Okay, we will be taking one section of the stomach at the level of fundus. One section we will be taking at the level of pylorus. And of course, the histological picture will remain the same for the four basic layers. What are those? Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and serosa. Now coming to the stomach, so it is the most expanded part of the gastrointestinal tract. So in this, food is mixed with digestive juices. It is churned into chyme. It is something like a mixer grinder what we use in our kitchen. Okay, where we generally grind the certain foods, right? So similarly, stomach is something like our grinder which is churning the food into a chyme. So it is divided into three parts like fundus, body, it is cardiac end, and lower it is pyloric end. Okay, you can see this is fundus, this is body, and this whole area is pyloric. The upper part is the cardiac sphincter and the lower part is the pyloric sphincter. They control the entry and exit of contents into the stomach. Food will remain in the stomach for at least 2 to 3 hours. No. Basic structure we know it has mucosa. Mucosa has further 3 layers like lining epithelium. Then we have lamina propria and the muscularis mucosa. Now coming to the lining epithelium, you can see all these are mucosal glands which are invaginating in the lamina propria. Isn't it? So these glands, because they are present in the stomach, they are called as gastric glands. And the openings of these gastric glands into the lumen of stomach, they are called as gastric pits. So these gastric glands, they are lined with, as you can see here, with simple tall columnar cells. Okay, and the openings are gastric pits. Okay, these cells are renewed every 3 days. So after, see, this is the lamina propria area into which the gastric glands are actually invaginated. So lamina propria is containing all gastric glands. So the outermost lining of this structure of this mucosa is nothing but the muscularis mucosae, where we have smooth muscle, inner circular and outer longitudinal. Now let us see, this is complete histological picture of the stomach, where you are finding this is the lining epithelium. The lining epithelium, the gastric glands are invaginating into the lamina propria, and this is the muscularis mucosae. The lining epithelium is all lined with simple columnar cells. We have few gastric glands where we have modified secretory cells also. We will discuss as we proceed. This is submucosa. Okay, then we have muscularis externa. The muscularis externa of stomach will show 3 layers instead of 2 layers. We have inner circular, middle longitudinal, and outer oblique. And of course, the outermost covering is serosa. Now, this picture has been taken from Diffio's atlas and it is quite standard. We want every one of you to draw this picture for your exam if fundus of the stomach is asked for your exam. And fundus of the stomach is usual university question, usually which comes from histology. Now, we know like this is lining epithelium. These are the gastric glands dipping in the lamina propria. This is muscularis mucosae. So this is mucosa. Then this is submucosa. And then this is muscularis externa, where we have 3 layers. Innermost is oblique, middle is circular, outermost is longitudinal. And the outermost covering what we have is serosa. Okay, the submucosa contains, now you just see here, this is all submucosa, where we have collagen fibers, elastin fibers, blood vessels, and certain glands. Isn't it? So dense irregular connective tissue where we have collagen fibers. It contains lymph vessels, capillaries, arterioles, and venules. Muscularis externa. So muscularis externa, you can see this is innermost is oblique muscle layer, middle is circular muscle layer, outermost is longitudinal muscle layer. So outermost peritoneal thin covering is serosa. Now let us see the stomach. So innermost is mucosa. Below the mucosa we have this submucous layer. Then we have muscle layer arranged in 3 layers. Innermost is oblique, middle circular, outer longitudinal. Then outermost covering is serosa. So this is the cardiac end of the stomach. This is pyloric end of the stomach. At the cardiac end we have physiological sphincter. At the pyloric end we have true anatomical sphincter, which is formed by the modification of circular muscle fibers of the muscularis externa. Okay, then this cardiac end of the stomach. So in the cardiac end, I said there is a transition of epithelium, change in epithelium. The epithelium which was like stratified squamous, non-keratinized in esophagus, now it has become columnar epithelium, simple columnar epithelium lining the gastric glands. Okay, so presence of mucous surface cells and cardiac glands. So submucosa, it consists of Meissner's plexus and blood vessels. Okay. Muscularis externa, we know it has inner oblique, middle circular, and outer longitudinal. Okay, meandric plexus is present between the circular and the longitudinal muscle layer. Outermost peritoneal covering is serosa, which is lined by simple squamous epithelium resting on a thin layer of connective tissue. So epithelium dips into lamina propria, isn't it? We have seen. This is all lining epithelium which is dipping into the lamina propria to form the openings which into the lumen. These are nothing but gastric pits that extend about 1/4 of the thickness of the mucosa. Deep to the gastric pits, mucosa is packed with gastric glands. In the cardiac region of the stomach, you call them as cardiac glands. In the fundus of the stomach, we call them as fundic glands. In the pyloric region of the stomach, we call them as pyloric glands. Ultimately, all, whether they are cardiac, whether they are fundic, or whether they are pyloric, they are all gastric glands. Now, the cardiac glands, which are present towards the cardiac end of the stomach. They are like small area near the opening of esophagus. They are either simple tubular or compound tubulo-alveolar glands. They have mucus secreting cells and produce mucus secretion. So this is stomach, this is fundus. You can see such a beautiful picture where we have, this is the lining epithelium. These are gastric glands dipping into the lamina propria. So here we have all specialized cells. The lining epithelium, you can see it is all lined with simple columnar cells that invaginate into like various extents into the lamina propria. Isn't it? This is all lamina propria where they have invaginated, forming gastric pits. Okay, the cells are involved in mucus secretion. The mucus protects the epithelium lining from damage due to the presence of acid in the stomach. Now, the fundus and body of the stomach, it is made up of 4 layers as follows. We know like mucosa shows numerous temporary folds which are called as rugae. Okay, you see this is the mucosa and these are all gastric glands. They are all lined with columnar cells. So these gastric glands are dipping in the lamina propria to form gastric pits. These pits extend about 1/4 of the thickness of the mucosa. So deep gastric pits mucosa presents gastric glands which are called as main gastric glands. So again the same diffuse picture what we have here. These are gastric glands which are dipping in the lamina propria gastric pits. Deeper inside we call them as gastric glands. Okay. At the upper part they are named as gastric pits. So main gastric glands, see these are the main gastric glands, right? So the main gastric glands, also called as fundic glands, if they are present in the fundus part of the stomach, they have different important 5 different types of cells. One is we have chief cells. Okay, as you can see here, these are the chief cells. Okay, then we have parietal cells. Chief cells are actually concerned with the secretion of enzymes like pepsinogen. Parietal cell is chiefly concerned with the secretion of hydrochloric acid, HCl, in the stomach. It is also concerned with the secretion of intrinsic factor, which is actually important for the absorption of vitamin B12. Isn't it? Deficiency of this only will lead to pernicious type of anemia. So we are at the neck region, we have specialized cells which are called as mucous neck cells. Okay, then we have other specialized cells like argentaphin cells. Okay, then undifferentiated cells are also there. Then we have like you also see like specialized cells like enteroendocrine cells. Okay, they are actually concerned with the secretion of local hormones like gastrin hormone. Okay, mucous cells will secrete mucus secretions. Okay, that is. So undifferentiated cells can transform into any of these type of cells based on the requirement. Now, auxintic cells, these are the auxintic cells or parietal cells, what we have studied. So these cells are actually taking strong eosin stain. Okay. Then they are also called as parietal cells as they lie against the basement membrane. They are numerous at the upper half of the gland. The cells are large. You can see here they are ovoid. Okay, polyhedral with large central nucleus. Okay, they are present individually among the peptic cells. Okay, so these auxintic are the parietal cells. So suppose individual cell under electron microscope, it looks like this. So these parietal cells, it has cell membrane at the apical or luminal